Hi, I'm Matthew Kline, and I'm here to talk about and teach you how to make potato Luckies. Potato Luckies are potato pancakes, small ones. A little bit about my background. As you can see here, this is a restaurant range with a wok unit. I've been cooking Chinese food for many years. This range dates back to '85. Chinese was my first love, but I've also gotten into Mexican, Moroccan, European cuisines of French, Italian, and Spanish, and Indian also. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Jewish food, and the Jewish holidays are an opportunity to cook Jewish food, and potato Luckies are remarkable. If you want to learn more about my cooking, you can go to Instagram at Matthew Kline Cooks, Matthew with 2 T's, K-L-I-N-E. Hanukkah. Hanukkah is the celebration, commemoration of the rededication of the Second Temple in Jerusalem over 2,000 years ago when the Maccabee Jews went in and were able to defeat the Greeks. They had enough oil to commemorate that for one day, but it lasted 8 days. And here's the menorah with lighting of 8 different candles over 8 days. This is a traditional menorah. And here is a menorah from one of my mother's friends that is shows you shtetl life in Eastern Europe, Ashkenazi Jews. Some of the other ritual objects of Hanukkah are geld, which is money, but these are chocolate coins, and dreidels are also used. The most important thing about Hanukkah and potato Luckies is oil. The fact that the oil lasted 8 days is a miracle of the oil, and so we cook with oil. Latkes are cooked with oil. In fact, latkes come from a word that means small pancake, and it's derived from Greek, which has to do with oil and oily substance. Okay? In Israel, where there are more Sephardic Jews and Mizrahi Jews, it's typically jelly donuts that are cooked in oil. Hi. I'm going to cover making potato Luckies, the ingredients and equipment you'll need, the prep, the cooking, the pan frying of the Luckies themselves. I'll encourage you to cook in advance because it takes time to make Luckies, and there's ways to make them in advance. Keep them in the oven where it keeps them warm and still crispy. And the last, we'll talk a little bit about various kind of condiments. I'll introduce you to 2 condiments that you could make, Apple Compost and Horseradish Labneh. And I'll provide you recipes. Just to let you know, there will be a resource page that will include recipes, including recipes for potato Luckies. So I'll read off of the actual recipe in terms of the ingredients and go through them with you right now. First, you'll need, and let me first tell you that this yields about 15 pancakes, enough for maybe 4 to 6 people in a larger meal. People laugh at me when I say that. Luckies are addictive. Chances are each person's going to want to eat 3 or 4, and you should plan based on that, so just be aware of it. To give you an example, last year I had 20 people here, and I ended up making 80 Luckies, and that took quite a while. Okay, you're going to need, for these 15 Luckies, for like 3 or 4 people, maybe 5, 2 pounds of russet potatoes. Now, you should wash these under water. I like to make them with the skin. That's totally up to you. You'll see that I leave it unpeeled. That's, if you want to peel it, then use a peeler and peel it, okay? And you can see we have a peeler right here. Second item, 1 medium yellow onion, okay? This will need to be unpeeled, and it's going to be grated also, okay? So that's an essential element. And you're going to be adding 2 eggs. So it says here 2 eggs, whisk. You're going to be doing that. You're going to be using oil, obviously, to fry. I recommend a vegetable oil. This is peanut oil. You could certainly use canola oil, safflower, sunflower, or grapeseed oil. What's important here is the oil is a high smoking oil. I would not use olive oil. That will burn at the kind of temperatures we're working with when we fry the latkes. Another option which was used by Ashkenazi Jews when they first started to make potato latkes in the 19th century, was schmaltz, okay? Poultry fat. And certainly chicken fat, duck fat, goose fat, those will work too. In fact, I'm sure they'd be terrific tasting. And then the last thing here I have is salt and pepper. Okay. Now, there are a lot of variations and options you can do while doing this. I mentioned, for example, adding 1/4 cup of matzah meal, panko, breadcrumbs, or flour. You'll see that in a lot of traditional latke recipes. That's used to sort of hold together the latke itself. I don't believe it's necessary. I don't even think it enhances the flavor, but if you want to do it, try it, see what you think. As far as what you put in the latke, you'll see that I actually have a very unusual option here. I actually talk about using a pound of celeriac or celery root. This is celeriac. Now, if you can find this at your supermarket, consider using it. I should add that Joe Nathan, who is a prominent Jewish cookbook author, has recipes for potato latkes that include celery root or celeriac. Typically, what I would do with this is peel this and use maybe 1/4 of this and also grate it and add it to the mixture. You could also, besides celery root, there's other options. You could also do it with sweet potato. You could do it with carrots, zucchini. Some people even add cheese. And those are all options also. Equipment. The most important piece of equipment is what you're going to grade with. This is what's called a box grater. Looks like a box, it's got 4 sides. I use this coarse grading side. Be aware there are other ways to grade. This is finer, this is really coarse, and this actually is pretty fine too. This is perfect for coarse grating. You'll probably get pieces that long when it comes to the potato. When it comes to grating the onion, they actually end up being shorter. But this is the ideal way of grating. If it's a plain grater, in other words, just one side like this, try to find one that has this coarse grade here. Another option is to use a food processor with a grating attachment. Some people, by the way, like to puree their latkes, so that could be an option too. I prefer the coarse grating in the way I'm showing you here. Okay, so you will be using a box grater, and that's a big deal. If you're peeling, you'll use a peeler. You may need to use a knife. If you're going to whisk eggs, you have 2 options. You can use a whisk here, or you can use this fork. Now, another item's over here, and I'll explain this. You're going to need to be squeezing water from the grated potatoes and onions, and there's many ways to do it. You can wrap it in a towel, literally, like this, and literally just tightly squeeze it till the water drains out. You can use a cheesecloth to do the same thing, wired mesh here, or a colander. What's important here is you want the grated potato and onions to have as little water as possible so that when you make the latkes, they're really crisp. Over here, we have pans. I mentioned an electric skillet. That would be great. Be aware the size of your pan is going to have an impact on how quickly you can make the latkes. This particular pan, 13 inches, this pan is 8 inches. The 13-inch one, I can do 6 or 7 latkes at once. Here, probably 4. Given that it's going to take approximately 15 minutes to make a batch of 6 or 7 or 3 or 4, it helps to have the larger pan. You will need a spatula. I have 2 here. Spatulas to both flatten the latkes and to also turn them over after you fried them for 5 or 6 minutes on one side and then to the other side. And last but not least, you can put paper towels down as you take the latkes out and on the counter to absorb some of the oil. The other important element is a baking sheet and a rack. Okay? And the reason this is important is if you're making the latkes in advance, you can put the latkes on here and put in the oven at 200, and they'll do just fine for 3 or 4 hours and still be crisp. Okay, prep. I'll read you the steps in the recipe and go through it with you. Okay, it says grate the potatoes, onion, and in this case celeriac, using a box grater or a food processor with a grating blade. Okay, so here I've already done this. This is the grated potato and onion. Step number 2, prep. Put the grated ingredients in a mesh strainer or towel or cheesecloth and squeeze out the liquid. Once drained, put it back in the bowl. Okay, so here I am. Here's a strainer. I'll do it this way. There's many different ways to do it. But the important thing is to get as much liquid out as possible. And over here, you can see the liquid. If I press down, a lot of this water is coming out. The more you get out, the crisper the Latke's are going to be. Put it back in the bowl. By the way, there are other ways to do this. One recommended method is to have a bowl of ice water. Put the grated potatoes and onions in that as you grate them, and then pull out the grated potato and onions and squeeze them in a towel or with a strainer to get all the liquid out, and put that back in the bowl actually. Let the bowl sit for 20 minutes and pour out the water. What you will be left with is potato starch on the bottom, which you can add back into the potatoes and onions so it's starchy and it holds together. Okay, that's step number 2, removing the water. Step number 3, add the eggs and mix, okay? So here's the whisked eggs. I'm going to add them, and I'm going to mix them. If you're using breadcrumbs, panko, matzah meal, you can add it at this time too. Once you have this done, you have finished with prep, and your next step is going to be cooking in the frying pan. Okay, we've done prep, and we're now going into the cooking. I have added basically 1/8 of an inch of peanut oil to this pan, and I've applied heat. The instructions here on 4 are heat your electric frying pan or griddle or pan to 360 to 375, and if you have the thermometer, you can certainly check it out to see whether you're in that area. Otherwise, what you can do also is take a little bit, and you can hear the sizzle, okay? That's an indication that you're ready to do the next step. You're going to take basically a spoonful, almost 2 tablespoons, and in the palm of your hand, you're going to form the pancake. And put it in here, like that. Okay, that's the first one. You can keep doing these. It says form into it says on the thing about 3 minutes, 3 inches, I mean. That's fine. Here we go, second one. Okay, and you might want to press it down like this if it seems a little bit high. Third one. And you're going to have to play it by ear. This is all very subjective doing this, okay? 3. 4. 5. Lavender. I can do one more. There we go. Okay. You'll do about 5 minutes on each side. You have to play it by ear. Turn it over, do the other side. We'll come back to you in 1 minute, very shortly after those are cooked. This is what the latkes look like after I flip them and they're cooking on the other side. I'm about a minute away from actually removing them. But this is a good shot to give you some idea of how much you should do in cooking them. Our Luckies are done. I'm going to put, you can put them on paper towels if you'd like. I'm going to put them on a rack that's on a baking sheet. Those are done. What you would then be doing in cooking is you would start with your next batch of 5 or 6 or 7, how many you can get in there, and continue cooking and putting them on the rack as you do it. Be aware, and I do say this in my instructions here, that add additional oil if needed. If the oil seems burnt or there's an accumulation of leftover burnt pieces, wash your griddle or pan and continue with a clean griddle or pan and new oil. And I guarantee you that after 2 batches or 3, you'll probably end up having to pour out the old oil and maybe even clean the pan and put in new oil to start again, okay? Cooking in advance, okay? I recommend, because if you have your guests waiting for you at the table, and I've done that, it's a long wait, you know, to take these and put them in an oven that's at 200. I did it last year. They were in there for like 3 hours or 4 hours, and they were great. They were still crispy. People loved them. That worked. I basically went from 9 in the morning to actually almost noontime to do 80 latkes, and they were terrific. Another option that's been talked about is you could refrigerate or freeze. I don't know how good that is. The literature on it is all over the place, okay? But I do know that using an oven that's 200 degrees will work for 3 or 4 hours. Last thing I want to talk about is condiments, okay? Condiments can be as simple as thyme, marjoram, parsley. You could provide applesauce or sour cream. And I should tell you, sour cream is popular because there's a story sort of associated with Hanukkah about a heroine, Judith, who plied an enemy general with cheese and wine and found a way to cut off his head and kill him. And therefore, for Hanukkah, milk products are very much a part of the meal also. I have 2 recipes here. One for an apple compote, which is related to applesauce. And this is sort of a French version of an applesauce. But you're going to get some apples. You're going to be cooking them and stirring over high heat until they break down, and adding sugar, lemon, and lime, vanilla, and spices. Also, for the horseradish labneh, and labneh is just simply a yogurt from the Middle East. I typically will use something like Vahi yogurt, and you can use prepared horseradish that's been drained, or you can get a horseradish and grate it and add it to it. But there is also this recipe for that, okay? And that sort of completes what I have to say. I want to wish you, everyone, a happy Hanukkah holiday season, and may you have much pleasure with your Luckies feast.